I thought sharing my boyfriend with my best friend would bring us closer, but I never imagined it would end with a body in the trunk of my car. The worst part: the haunting metallic smell of blood that seeped into the very fabric of my car, a scent that no amount of air freshener could ever erase. It's a smell that now lives in my nightmares, a permanent fixture in the landscape of my memory. Sounds like the opening line of a bad thriller, I know. But it's my reality. Let me rewind back to a time when the biggest problem in my life was choosing which movie to watch on a Friday night. My name is Nikki. My best friend, the sister I chose, is Tammy. We've been inseparable since we were 5, building blanket forts and sharing dreams of a future that seemed impossibly far away. We knew everything about each other, from my fear of deep water stemming from a childhood incident at the local pool, to her secret shame about her family's constant money troubles. We were a unit, Nikki and Tammy, a single entity in 2 bodies. We had a language of our own, built on 20 years of shared history, finished each other's sentences, and knew when the other was hurting from a single glance. Then came Josh. He was sweet, a little nerdy, with a smile that could light up the gloomiest British day and an awkward charm that I found endlessly endearing. He was my first everything. First real love, first serious relationship, the first person I imagined a life with beyond our small, suffocating town. I introduced him to Tammy almost immediately, thrilled that my 2 favorite people hit it off. They got along well, a bit too well in hindsight, with an easy banter that made me feel like the luckiest girl in the world. Our trio became the new normal. Movies, pub quizzes where Josh's encyclopedic knowledge of useless trivia always won us the cheap bottle of wine, lazy Sundays in the park with a picnic and a battered old football. I felt complete. I had my rock Tammy and my future Josh. It felt like a perfect, unbreakable circle. The idea didn't come from a place of perversion or kink. It came from a place of profound, misguided love, a twisted sense of loyalty forged in the fire of our long friendship. Tammy was struggling. A series of failed relationships and a deep-seated loneliness that had haunted her since her father walked out had left her feeling fundamentally unlovable, broken. She'd watched Josh and me with a sad, wistful look in her eyes, a look that said, "Why not me?" And it shattered my heart. One night, after too much cheap wine on my sofa, she broke down, sobbing that she felt like she'd never experienced what we had. She felt defective, like there was something inherently wrong with her that repelled love. Josh, in his awkward, kind way, tried to reassure her. "Any guy would be lucky to have you, Tammy. You're brilliant and funny and, well, you're you." But his words seemed to bounce off her. The seed was planted in my mind. A terrible, foolish seed. What if she could experience it? Not just the words, but the physical proof of being desired? What if she could feel that closeness, that safety just for one night? With someone she already trusted implicitly? Josh. In my wine-addled, emotionally charged state, it seemed less like a betrayal and more like the ultimate act of sisterhood, a radical gift of intimacy. It took me a week to muster the courage to voice the thought aloud, first to Josh. We were in bed, the soft glow of the street lamp outside casting long shadows across the room. He was horrified. "Are you insane, Nikki?" he hissed, sitting bolt upright. "She's your best friend. I'm in love with you. This isn't some porno plot." "I know that," I pleaded, my logic twisted by desperation to fix the unfixable crack in my friend's soul. "And she knows that. It wouldn't be about love. It would be about therapy, a confidence boost, about showing her she's desirable, that she's worthy of being touched and wanted." He refused point blank. For days it was a tense, unspoken thing between us. But I was persistent, blinded by what I thought was a noble cause. I wore him down, using his genuine affection for Tammy and his love for me as leverage. "It would be a gift from us to her," I said, framing it as a shared charitable act. "A one-time thing. To help her get her mojo back. To show her what she's been missing. I see now that I was playing with forces I didn't understand, treating human emotions and intimacy like Lego blocks I could rearrange to build a happier picture. The night it happened, I set the scene myself, a feeling of surreal dread coiling in my stomach. I lit candles in my own living room, the same room where we'd had so many happy memories, and put on a playlist of soft ambient music. I opened a bottle of expensive wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. I tried to make it feel special for her, a night dedicated to healing her wounds. When Josh arrived, pale and nervous, his shoulders tense, I gave him an encouraging smile that felt like a crack widening in the foundation of my soul. I kissed his cheek, a dry, perfunctory peck, and told them I was going to a late movie. "Have fun," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I didn't go to the cinema. I sat on a cold, damp park bench for 3 hours, watching the lights in the surrounding flats go out one by one. The chill seeped through my jeans, but it was nothing compared to the cold fear solidifying inside me. My stomach churned, my heart pounded a frantic, panicked rhythm against my ribs. What had I done? What monstrous, naive thing had I set in motion? I imagined them talking, laughing, the silence, the touch, and each thought was a fresh wave of nausea. I was the architect of my own impending heartbreak, and I was watching the blueprint burn in real time. When I returned, the atmosphere in the flat was thick enough to choke on. The candles had guttered out, leaving a smell of smoke and wax. Tammy was flushed, her eyes bright but shifty, avoiding my gaze. She muttered a quick, breathless "thank you" before grabbing her coat and almost running out of the flat without looking back. Josh was sitting on the sofa, still fully dressed, his head in his hands. He looked up at me and his eyes were empty, hollowed out. "It's done," he said, his voice a flat, emotionless monotone. "Don't ever ask me to do anything like that again." It felt wrong. I thought that was the end of it. The grand, strange experiment was over. We would never speak of it again and things would slowly return to normal. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of the end of everything, the first domino in a chain that would lead to utter ruin. Josh became a ghost in our relationship. He'd flinch when I touched him as if my skin burned him. Our easy intimacy was gone, replaced by a stiff, formal politeness that was worse than any argument. He started working late, his texts became infrequent, cryptic, and cold. "Busy at work. Don't wait up." I was drowning in a sea of regret, but when I tried to talk to Tammy about it, she was different too. The sad, vulnerable girl was gone, replaced by a giddy, almost possessive woman. She started buying the same perfume I used, wearing her hair in the same style I'd worn for years. She'd make comments that were laced with poison, disguised as innocent observations. "Josh really likes it when I wear my hair up like that, you know?" she'd say with a sly, knowing smile that didn't reach her eyes. Or, "He told me he thinks blue is a really underrated color on a woman." Funny, he never mentioned that to you, did he? The bomb dropped a month later on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday until it didn't. Josh sat me down at our small kitchen table, his face a mask of grim resolution. "Nikki, I can't do this anymore. With you." My world tilted on its axis. "What? Because of that night?" "Josh, I'm so sorry, I was wrong, it was a terrible mistake, we can fix this, we can go to couples counseling." "It's not about that night," he interrupted, still not meeting my eyes, staring at a crack in the tabletop. It's Tammy. We've been talking. A lot. What happened, it opened something up. We have a connection. A real one." I felt the air leave my lungs as if I'd been punched. "A connection?" "Josh, I orchestrated that. It was a one-night stand born out of my stupid, naive idea to help my friend. It wasn't real. It wasn't just one night for us, Nikki," he said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. "We've been seeing each other since then." I'm moving in with her. The betrayal was so absolute, so brutal, it felt like a physical blow. My best friend and my boyfriend. The two people I had brought together, the two pillars of my life, had not only collided but had fused together, pushing me out into the cold. I was the architect of my own destruction, and they were happily living in the house I had built for them with my own foolish hands. The confrontation with Tammy was even worse. There was no remorse, only a triumphant, victorious gleam in her eyes. We met at our usual cafe, the one where we'd spent countless hours dissecting our lives. You gave him to me, Nikki, she said, stirring her latte, her voice sickly sweet. You presented him to me on a silver platter. You can't be surprised I developed a taste for him. He says he's never felt this kind of passion before. What you had was comfortable. What we have is real. I was utterly alone. The friend group, our mutual friends, were caught in the middle of a nuclear fallout. Some took my side, horrified by their duplicity and the calculated cruelty of their affair. Others were swayed by Tammy's twisted narrative, that she and Josh had found a real, passionate love and I was just the jealous, controlling ex-girlfriend who couldn't handle being left behind. My mother, who had always adored Tammy like a second daughter, was no help. People's hearts are complicated, love, she'd say, trying to placate me over the phone. Maybe it was just meant to be. You're young, you'll find someone else. Her dismissal felt like a second betrayal. I fell into a deep, dark hole. I called in sick to work until my sick pay ran out. I stopped answering calls and doors. My life became a silent, grayscale cycle of crying, staring at the water-stained ceiling, and replaying every moment of my own foolishness on a relentless, torturous loop. The anger festered, turning from a sharp, searing pain into a cold, hard stone of pure hatred in my chest. I hated them, but I hated myself more. Weeks turned into a miserable, gray month. The flat, once filled with laughter and love, was now a tomb of memories. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, the doorbell rang, shattering the silence. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peered through the peephole. It was Josh. He looked terrible, unshaven, his clothes rumpled, eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Nikki, he breathed, pushing past me into the flat before I could even process his presence. I made a huge mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I just stared at him, the stone in my chest feeling heavier than ever. I said nothing. Tammy, she's not who I thought she was, he continued, pacing my living room like a caged animal. She's obsessive. She goes through my phone every 5 minutes. She has to know where I am every second of the day. She's already talking about moving in, about marriage, about babies. It's insane. It's only been a few weeks. I can't breathe. I think she only wanted me because I was yours. It was never about me. It was about winning. About beating you. A part of me, the vindictive, wounded part, wanted to scream, "I told you so." To revel in his misery. But I just felt tired. So incredibly bone-deep tired. The drama, the passion, the pain, it all just seemed exhausting. "I miss you, Nikki," he said, his voice breaking. He stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I miss us. Our easy Sundays. The way you'd laugh at my stupid jokes. What we had was real. It was good. This thing with her, it's a sickness. Toxic. Please, can we just talk? Can we try to fix this?" He reached for me, his hand aiming for my arm, and I recoiled as if his touch was acid. The man who had once been my sanctuary now felt like a stranger, a carrier of a contagious disease. "Get out, Josh. Nikki, please, you have to listen to me. You owe me that much," he insisted, his voice rising in pitch, laced with a frantic, unstable energy. "I don't owe you anything." I snapped, the stone in my chest finally cracking, releasing a torrent of pent-up anger. "You made your choice. You chose her. Now get out of my flat. What happened next was a blur of motion and panic. He grabbed my arm, his grip like a vice, his fingers digging into my flesh. You have to listen. You have to forgive me. Let go of me. I screamed, pure terror flooding my system. We struggled. He was stronger, his desperation giving him a frantic, unpredictable strength. I shoved him away with all my might, my hands connecting hard with his chest. He stumbled backward, his foot catching on the edge of the Persian rug my grandmother had given me. His arms flailed, grasping at empty air. There was a sickening, wet crack as the back of his head connected with the sharp, unforgiving corner of my marble coffee table. And then silence. A silence so profound it felt louder than any scream. He lay on my floor, completely still, his eyes open and staring at nothing. A dark, thick pool of blood began to spread slowly from underneath his head, soaking into the cream-colored wool of the rug, a vibrant, horrifying red against the pale background. My breath hitched in my throat, coming in short, ragged gasps. I knelt, my fingers trembling so violently I could barely control them, and felt for a pulse at his neck. Nothing. Just still, cool skin. The world shrunk to the size of my living room, to the body on the floor, to the relentless metallic smell of blood that was already beginning to fill the air. My mind, numb with shock and terror, kicked into a bizarre survivalist mode. I couldn't call the police. It would look like I killed him in a jealous rage. Who would believe it was an accident? Tammy would make sure they didn't. She would paint me as the scorned, vengeful woman who lured him back to murder him. I was alone with the corpse of my ex-boyfriend, in the home we had shared, with no one to vouch for my story. A cold, detached practicality settled over me, silencing the screaming in my head. I had to make him disappear. The next few hours were a nightmare of gruesome logistics. I dragged his heavy, limp body to my car, a small blue hatchback, wrapping him first in a plastic sheet from the garden center and then in the very rug he had died on. The blood had soaked through, leaving a dark, damp patch on the fabric. It was the middle of the night. The rain was coming down in sheets, washing the world clean, providing a curtain of noise and anonymity. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove away from the city into the dark, winding country lanes of the Peak District, my headlights cutting two frail beams through the oppressive darkness. My plan, if you could call the frantic buzzing static in my head a plan, was to find a remote wooded area, to dig a shallow grave with the small shovel I kept in my boot for winter, and to bury the evidence of my terrible mistake. To bury Josh and with him the last remnants of my old life. But I never made it. The lack of sleep, the shock, the overwhelming terror. It all made my driving erratic. A police car on a routine patrol noticed my car weaving slightly, my tires hitting the gravel on the side of the narrow hedge-lined lane. They put on their blues. My heart stopped, then hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. A cold sweat broke out all over my body. I pulled over, my hands glued to the steering wheel, my knuckles white with tension. The officer approached, his flashlight beam cutting through the rain-streaked window. He asked for my license and registration. My movements were robotic, slow. As I fumbled in the glove compartment, my mind screaming, his flashlight beam swept across the back of my car, illuminating the rug-wrapped bundle in the trunk. The shape was unmistakably human. A leg bent at an awkward angle, the outline of a head. "Step out of the car, ma'am. Now." That's how I ended up here in this cold, sterile interrogation room, the fluorescent lights humming overhead like a swarm of angry insects. The vinyl chair is sticky, the table is scarred with cigarette burns and deep gouges. I've told them everything from the ill-conceived menage a trois born of pity to the affair to the accidental shove. They listened, their faces impassive. They don't believe me. Why would they? It's a story too sordid, too convoluted to be true. It sounds like a lie woven from the threads of a bad Lifetime movie. The door opens with a soft click. It's not the detectives. It's Tammy. Her face is pale, her eyes swollen and red from crying, but as her gaze lands on me, something shifts. A slow, vicious, triumphant smile spreads across her lips, a grotesque mockery of grief. The police must have called her the grieving girlfriend to deliver the news of Josh's death. She is playing her part perfectly. The detectives hover by the door as she walks towards me. She leans across the scarred table, her voice a venomous, intimate whisper meant only for my ears. The smell of her perfume, my perfume, fills the space between us. "You always had to be the special one, didn't you, Nikki?" she hissed. "The one he loved first. The one he said he wanted to marry. But look at you now. You've lost him forever. And you've lost everything else too. Your freedom, your future, your name, it's all gone. Your murder. I win." She straightened up, the mask of grief falling back into place as she turned to the detectives, a single perfect tear tracing a path down her cheek. Then she left, leaving me alone in the humming silence. I am left with the crushing, inescapable weight of my actions. I thought I was giving a gift of love. I thought I was saving my friend. Instead, I set in motion a chain of events that led to a man's death, my own ruin, and the ultimate twisted victory of the one person I trusted most. The body in the trunk was his, but the life destroyed is mine. The police see a killer. Tammy sees a loser. And I am just alone, waiting in this silent, bright room for a future that will never come.